Hey everyone, Joe here. I recently sat down for another chat with Johannes from Aligned Games. Here we talk about the emerging influence of generative AI on game development and whether we see it as a threat to our projects and careers. I'll be releasing the full hour-plus conversation in a few days if you prefer that format.
Okay, so we are quickly running out of time, so
Oh
let's
shoot, yeah.
let's do only a little bit of time on AI stuff. So
Okay, yeah.
basically, is AI a threat not only to your project, but also to your job, to your career as a developer? Not necessarily your job because you have a full-time job, but I'm more talking about myself. And what do you think? Well, let's. I'm going to ask you two things. So that's going to be one question, and the next one is going to be, what do you think about the way that Unity is looking to implement AI, and they already have to an extent. But yeah, first off, do you think AI is going to be a threat to the way that you approach your project, or do you think it's going to be a boon?
I think I'm a little bit undecided right now as to there's sort of like two sides to it, which is one is like, you know, AI has peaked. It's really not going to get much better. Sorry, the dogs are making some noise because Carrie's home. Um, AI has peaked and it's really not going to get much better than it already is. And it's all a bunch of hype. It's a bubble that's going to burst. And on the other side is, you aren't ready. AI is going to change everything. You're all going to lose your jobs. Haha, stupid artists, stuff like that. Like there's these two extremes that both kind of feel wrong to me. But I don't know where in between we're going to land. So I I think AI is a threat more generally, less in terms of AI is going to replace you specifically, and more like there will be enough of a sort of like lowering of the water level in terms of demand for programmers, artists, people writing marketing copy, whatever. Like if you just have some throwaway art you need on, a brochure or something, you used to have to like pay a photographer, pay an artist, whatever for that sort of stuff, and now you don't. Like if it's low consequence stuff, if it's kind of boilerplate text that nobody reads anyway, why pay a writer? Just have an AI do it. Um, I think there are knock-on effects to that where that's how people get into these industries. Like, how do you start writing? You don't start writing for the New York Times. You start writing like, you know, marketing copy on brochures for timeshares or whatever sort of stuff. Or same thing with photography or um, art programming, things like that. Like entry, like there's this sort of phenomenon right now in the programming space where companies are only hiring senior engineers and they're not hiring juniors anymore because it's hard to like it's expensive to bring a junior up to senior level, especially when a lot of times the juniors just leave your company after a year or two anyway. So I think, not to get too far into that tangent, but I think there is a sort of danger that AI is cutting off the bottom of a lot of industries, and that may have knock-on effects in terms of, you know, if you knock off the whole bottom of, oops, I bumped my microphone. You knock off the whole bottom of a market in terms of like the jobs that are available in it. Well, that just means there's a lot fewer jobs and a lot more people competing for them. So there's more competition for the top of the market. Um, I think
Okay.
that may have some unanticipatable knock-on effects. So I'm less concerned that like, oh, an AI is going to be able to do what I do, but more concerned of like, hey, will AI games, cheaply made AI games, flood the market and make it harder to get attention because now there's 10 times as many games that are competing for people's attention because 9 out of 10 of them are AI generated garbage. Yeah, that could affect me for sure.
Well,
Um,
here's the thing with that. I agree with what you're saying to an extent, but I've seen it already become a problem at the higher level of development as well. Because so this is just stuff that I've seen on Twitter, but the one thing that I've seen is I don't know how big of a fan of Dungeons and Dragons you are, but
yeah,
they
I've seen this too.
yeah, that's one example of it. Is them.
Uh, Yeah, in case you aren't or don't know, Dungeons and Dragons, you probably have heard of it at least. Wizards of the Coast, the company, got accused, and I think correctly, of using AI art in some of their products, like made it into final printed books or something like that. And of course, they said, "Oh, we've worked with this artist before, and we didn't know it. We didn't tell them to use AI. We didn't specify they couldn't. They didn't inform us. They haven't in the past. They won't in the future, etc., etc." But yeah, you're right. It is making its way into
And that
like
could
the
very
top
well
tier
be true.
content.
It could just be at an artist level that someone did something they shouldn't have. But another example of this, and this is unverified, but the game Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is releasing soon, and apparently, and this is substantiated to some extent, apparently the level designers are now not developing the levels but cleaning them up. So apparently the levels are being developed by AI, and the level designers clean up the AI's work and make it palatable. And this is semi-substantiated by job listings that I forget the company now exactly, because they alternate companies when they make Call of Duties, but I think it might be Treyarch. But Treyarch, if it is them, had enlisted people to work specifically with AI, and now I've seen YouTube videos of people discussing it, and apparently the maps have structures that are, you can tell that these are made by trained models of AI, specifically trained on Call of Duty's old level design. And the I don't know if you've seen anyone play the game, but the game does not seem to be very good. And this is possibly the biggest game in video gaming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't heard that. It does.
Look, it can be false, but this is just something that I've seen that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, and I've seen it in enough other places too. One thing that this is not my take; it's somebody else's, but I do think it's interesting. Is there is the notion that using AI art, especially if it's easily detectable, although like you mentioned, even if they're trying to clean it up and make it not as easily detectable, people can kind of sniff it out. Using AI art makes your brand feel cheap. It's sort of like having an obviously knockoff counterfeit designer handbag. Like the whole reason you have a designer handbag is to, communicate that I have money, I'm classy, I'm a high value person. Then if you're using an obvious knockoff, you don't get it. It's like I have a fake it's like telling people you have a fake Rolex. It's like what do you want them to think about you? Like like so I think when people detect the AI art, and it's, there's varying shades of how detectable it is, it makes your brand, your product, your game, whatever it is, feel cheap, and it makes it like it leaves a bad taste in the consumer's mouth. And I can't remember who was saying this. Maybe it was Thomas Brush actually on Twitter, that he thinks that the future of basically everything, like art, games, whatever, is going to be authenticity.
Yeah.
And like, connecting with that human, because people might think they want AI generated music or AI generated movies or AI generated games or whatever, but they really don't. And that once they realize that, they'll be seeking out things that are more authentic, and the authenticity will be the most valuable thing.
Yeah.
Now we'll see, because people love junk food. People love junk food,
true.
so who knows?
That's true. But I do agree with that sentiment, because if everything becomes the same, then something that is not the same is going to stand out so much. And I don't fear games that are coming out that primarily use AI, because I know that my game is going to stand out above those. So to me, that isn't the biggest worry necessarily. To me, the worry comes in specifically with the second part of my revenue, which I want to shift to, which is asset creation.